Hello and welcome to today's painting demonstration. My name is Leah and I teach acrylic painting here on my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you how to do this. This is Pinecrest, California. It's a snowy scene, but it's not fresh snow, it's not on trees, it's nice low late day sunset, and the mountains in this photo are very, very purple, so it's kind of subtle on the reference image here, but I'm going to bring that out and make that area bigger. And it goes into apricot, then light yellow, then light blue. So I'm going to explain my whole painting process along the way, and you're interested in more information about this, I have an ebook and my material list is accessible on my website, and the links are down in the description below. So today's painting is Nature's Whispers number 60. And here is the work that I have done in the thumbnail. So this is the original photograph that I took. And a lot of times what will happen is you'll take a photograph and you're like, I really like an aspect of this photograph, but other things will be completely out of balance or not quite right. There will be hard lines pulling your eye off your composition. And so when you photograph it, you come out of reality and into a square or rectangle, and then you start to see some things that might be a little distracting to the eye. So that's where you do the work in the thumbnail. So instead of this snow hill, it goes way down. We were behind a restaurant. And this is a very hard line. I think there's like a manhole cover right here, so took that all out. Made the snow scoop you up, keep you in the scene. Also, there were some little dappled light coming through the trees. It's not in this photo, but it was in other photos, so I'm going to add that here into the foreground subtly. And then I am changing the composition of the trees to make sure we're not blocking too much of the purple mountain feature that is what drew me to this scene. I'm going to add some light pink clouds and maybe some wispy white ones up in the sky as well, creating lead lines that bring you into the sun. So I'm also going to warm up the branches that are radiating around that sunspot there. I have some light pencil on my paper. This is an 8" by 8" hot press watercolor paper. And I'm going to start with my large filbert brush, and I'm going to put down some burnt sienna as our underpainting. I often start with this, and I'm just using Liquitex transparent burnt sienna, I believe. Now, when I got the regular burnt sienna, I didn't see a profound difference between the transparent and the regular, but since I am using this with water, I am using the transparency to my advantage. I'm going to start with the darkest value zones, which is going to be the trees, and I'm just roughly putting this in its place. When I establish my values, or reinforce my values in this first foundational layer, I'm setting myself up for success by giving myself like training wheels almost. It's one less thing to have to pay attention to. And this tree on the far left is going to be particularly dark. But of course, all these dark valued trees are also going to have quite a bit of warmth in them, especially on the sun side of these trees. Try to make sure that your branches aren't creating too much repetition in the shapes that they're making. You want your trees to be not always balanced, but mostly balanced, but not symmetrical. That'll keep them interesting. Okay, that would be the dark values. Now the medium values, I'm just adding water to my brush. I'm just wiping that off a little bit. Next lighter area is our foreground. Just a really light wash on that area. I'm making sure it's not like dripping or anything because I want that to dry fairly quickly. When you're working on a porous material, you can go ahead and add some water. It's still going to bind to the paper. Okay, now I'm going to come down from the corner of the sky because that's going to be the darkest area, and I'm just going to quickly, very lightly cover up the remaining white of the paper. Okay. With each layer of paint, you're just reinforcing the original composition that you planned on doing. So after I make the thumbnail of the reference photo with all of the changes, then I transfer a drawing onto what I'm going to paint. And at that point, I'm primarily working off of the thumbnail. This thumbnail is in full color. I just kind of ran away with myself, and I wanted to try out some ideas and see how it would look. And it's good to start out on something that's just very low investment, because if there was an idea here that I didn't want to carry into the finished painting, then I could just start over, no big deal. So I'll primarily be working off this and then referring back to the original reference for color notes or to remember something about the scene. So we still do look at that one a little bit. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is going to mix some of the colors that I'm going to be using. So I have a nice warm purple, a peach color, and then a dark warm for the trees. For that purple, I'm going to take the quinacridone magenta and some titanium white and just a touch of cerulean blue. To cool it down just a little bit. That's about right. Now for some peach. Got my cadmium red and cadmium yellow. And get myself an orange, and then I'm just going to add some white to the corner. really leave myself very much yellow. I'm going to have to get some more. There we go, that's the color that we want. Okay, that warm dark is going to be made of ultramarine and burnt sienna. And I'm just going to add more burnt sienna and possibly a little bit of magenta where it's closer to the sun. But my darkest value is usually this color right here, this combination. And then if it needs to go cooler, I add a little bit more ultramarine. If it needs to go warmer, then I let it have a little bit more sienna in there. It's a very easy way. There we go, nice and dark. A little bit more on the warm side of things. Of course, our sky is going to be composed of cerulean blue and white as it comes down to that yellow. I'm going to put aside the filbert brush because we're all done with that guy. I think what I'm going to do, we have a gradient in the far background and then all these intricate shapes on top of it. I am going to do some reverse painting, like cut in some sky into the trees, but I think I'm still going to put the sky gradient on first. It's just going to simplify things. And then if a blend kind of goes over a tree shape, it's not going to be a big deal. So I'm switching over to my small filbert brush for this. Using titanium white and cerulean blue, I'm going to start in the corner. Grabbed a little bit more white as I was moving on the sky. It's above the sun. And then I was blending back into the blue that I had just put down. And that is why I strategically place the cerulean blue next to the white, so that I'm always able to easily access this blue to white gradient. And then of course the other lightest value, the cadmium yellow light, is across from the white as well. Very easy to access there. don't worry too much about having super smooth blends, but I do like the brush strokes to be heading in a direction that makes sense. So in this painting, I have these clouds that are going to be heading towards the sun, coming in from the upper right. Not only is that going to be, I'm going to add some pink to that for a nice wispy lively looking cloud. It's also going to help us transition to a more yellow color. Okay, now I'm working myself down towards the horizon line. I'm just about there. I need to add some yellow to my brush though, so I'm going to make sure the blue that's in there is pretty much gone. I haven't added any watered down paint to the sky yet, so it should dry very, very quickly. And I'm going to take that peach color and I'm just going to pull it up over that super light blue. And now the darker orange. I'm going to try to keep that a little tighter onto the mountain top. And of course the little sunspot. Okay, now that we got that sky gradient in there, oh, that's right, the pink clouds. I think I could probably do that with our 1/4 inch flat, so I'm going to give this little filbert a pretty good rinse out, and then I'm going to set it aside. Switch over to the 1/4 inch flat. I'm mixing a little bit of pink that I didn't have down before, but it's just going to consist of titanium white and just a touch cadmium red. I'm not going to need much more than that. I'm going to take the brush at an angle, and I'm just going to do a couple of dry brush lines radiating out and away from the sun, and change the angle a little bit to get some varying shapes. And if it helps you, and it might, you can go ahead and strategically place those over maybe some brush strokes that you weren't in love with. I added just a little bit of white to my brush, and I am going to add that to the pink so we get some variation in the color. Now I'm looking back at the reference photo and I'm seeing just the smallest line of like melon pink color right up against that purple mountain. And I'm going to try to add that. That's easy enough to add in, even if it's only a subtle difference. Now my light purple. I'm gonna add just a little bit more quinacridone, and I'm gonna drag the pink down in there to warm it up just a little bit, because I feel like the top of the mountain, that distant background mountain, is a little bit warmer, which would make sense. Now the reason why I use these two different reds is the cadmium red is a really strong orange red. The quinacridone magenta is super, super cool red, but it's also transparent in nature. They mix well together, so you can go from a warm pink, a light warm pink, into a cooler pink, utilizing both those reds. I feel like the interplay between them is very friendly. Here comes the purple. Now I'm going to go right up against that pink line that I put down. A little bit more water on my brush for controllability. I don't really want a dry brush line. Okay, now I'm gonna pick up the next cooler purple, just like a medium purple. I'm going to try to overlap what I already have put down and mix it a little bit. There's going to be a lot of tree shapes here. Okay, now it's going to be time to add some like yellow grains. I didn't have that mixed earlier, but I'm going to take burnt sienna and cerulean blue. A distant muted green. I might add just a touch of magenta, muting it down just a bit more. There we go. Might be too dark in value. I just grabbed a little bit of that orange that we mixed earlier for the sunset. And then pull just a touch more cerulean blue. I think that might do it. Yes. Works just fine. I'm pulling that over the purple that I put down just a moment ago. This area is not going to be super easy to see behind all the trees that are going to be in the foreground. I'm using a flat brush on its side to give us a little tiny tree line in the distant background. Also, this paint is fairly transparent, so there's going to be some glow from that underpainting showing through. Okay, now these trees in the foreground, I'm grabbing a little bit more of that orange down there and some burnt sienna, and that's going to give us some sunset glowy tree color. Oops, unless I accidentally grab our darkest value there. shapes I'm going to add in the midground are a little bit lighter than what we had there previously. Still pretty muted orangey green. And I'm going to add some really, really loose tree shapes here to this midground. It's just adding some variation to our midground area. There's going to be a lot of more powerful overlapping shapes on top of that. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to come into the foreground. I think what I'll do is I'll add a little bit of that pink color, cadmium red and white. I want the warmer pink, and the light yellow that I mixed from earlier. And I'm gonna dabble down where I would like the light from the sun to be hitting that snow. Just a little bit over here too, not a lot. Okay, now I'm gonna be pulling snow over that. In the picture, if I was replicating this exactly, I would be just using cerulean blue and white for that area right there. But I think in the corners, I'm going to add a little bit of purple. I'm still using the flat brush. I'm just very softly dry brush dragging around those little sunspots, the sun dapples. And what that's going to do is it's going to reveal some of the underpainting right up next to where we laid down the pink, and it's going to convey some shifting color. Give the color a little bit of movement. Just don't want to make too many large hard lines that go off of our painting. I want to make sure that they're contained within. As the acrylic paint dries, you can kind of decide if you want to add another layer. And if that next layer was from a remixed pile, just go ahead and make sure to incorporate that color if it's slightly different into the rest of the snow. I'm actually a big fan of remixing and then incorporating that new color. It's hard to get exactly the same thing, and that's part of why I'm doing a lot of artistic blending instead of smooth blending. I don't like smooth gradients, honestly. It's not only is it a little bit tedious and cumbersome, and a little bit of planning involved, but I don't feel like it always looks that natural. It's our cool evening snow with our dappled light. Okay, now we're ready for some tree shapes, some mid-ground tree shapes. So I think what I should do is start with the branches that are going towards the sun, because those are going to be really warm. So our darkest mixture here, I'm going to grab some magenta and a little bit of burnt sienna, kind of add it to 1/4, and this will be our warm overlapping branches. If you feel like you want it to be even warmer and a little bit more opaque, you can add some cadmium red. And then we're still using the flat brush. I kind of have it in my head that this most left tree is a cedar tree. This tree is more of a young pine. All right, now as I move away, from that sunspot, I'm gonna pick up progressively darker paint until I get to this tree right here, which is, I guess it's a different material or a different kind of tree. To me, it looks like a dried out pine tree a little bit, but it's catching the sun in a different way, and it's warmer and has looser bristle structure. So I'm gonna make a solid attempt at that. See how it goes. When you're positive painting trees, it can tend to be, they can get real bushy really fast. So that's where the negative painting is going to help us out a bit and creating a little bit more air. This one is quite sparse at the top, so I'm doing a thorough job at sharpening up this flat brush. I'm going to use the itty bitty tip. To stabilize my hand, I'm putting my pinky down on the painting, but only in places I know to be dry. Paper does dry very quickly with acrylic. It's a very nice perk. So if you're going to work in layers, it is definitely nice. You can move quickly and fix a lot of mistakes like that. See, now the reference photo is doing me no good. I got to refer back to the thumbnail as to what my plan was for this next spot. See, I'm gonna put the trunk in on this last tree to keep myself on track. I think it comes up a little bit. I'm still using that 1/4 inch flat. I dragged down a little bit of orange to my tree silhouette color. I'm using that tiny, tiny tip of my brush. And honestly, this brush has been more reliable than my points, which I need to have them replaced. I am hoping that Santa is gonna bring some new point brushes. Now, these were Princeton Select rounds. They're kind of like a medium quality. And I don't know, yeah, you can tell on stream actually that the tip for a 3-0, that is way too big. That's way bigger than what I wanted. So I've been using the corner of my flat brush and also the liner to do very small detailed work, but I'd like that not to be the case anymore. When I change those brushes out, I will be changing that on the material list as well, so no worries. Between the color and these little scratchy brush strokes, it's definitely giving a dried out pine tree, which is what I am wanting for this spot. This scene was behind a restaurant that was just off the main road up towards Pinecrest Lake. It is the closest snow for us when we're going just to go to the snow. Very nice restaurant. They did, I don't know if it was advertised pizza out front, but it was kind of just general American type grill food. Once you got in there, it was way fancy, and I wish I could tell you the name, but I couldn't remember. This was taken last year, I believe. Now I'm taking the darker color at the bottom of the tree, and I'm gonna kind of incorporate that up a little bit. especially on the side that is away from the light. That would make the most sense. Okay, now there's a couple of little leafless snags that are in between those two center trees. And that's going to give us a little bit of variation in the shapes. And I'm thinking I'm going to make them this color here. So I have this darkest value, which is our tree silhouette color, and then it's pulled over here to the burnt sienna. And this is a little bit warmer here. I have also pulled down some orange here and using it for that pine snag tree. Now what I'm going to do is a little bit of that peach color. Nice warm medium brown. I'm going to try that out for the snag. Oh. There, a little desaturated. We've got 3 of them here with some varying branch shapes. Two down there, and I'm wondering if I should add a third or if I like the 2. And I think I might just like the 2 of them right here, and I'll just detail them out a little bit more. Okay, so I see we have lost, I'm not completely lost, it wasn't for no reason, but the little tree, the vague tree shape that I put in the mid-ground earlier, that I knew that a lot of it was going to get covered up, but it's kind of completely gone, and I'm wondering if I should add a little bit more dimension to that. Going forward, I'm going to use one of our little misfit rounds, our Princeton Select misfit rounds. I noticed that these were at Michael's, and I was like, they were in the intermediate quality section, which I would agree with. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up some of that orange. I have a good amount of water in my brush, which is going to add some transparency. I never added more yellow to my palette. I'm going to see if I can just make do with what I have there. A little bit more water, and I'm going to just sketch a little bit of branch shape reaching towards the sun. And wipe off my paintbrush, and now I'm just going to blend that in, rinse out, wipe off again. And you can see what's happening is I'm blending that edge out into what's already there. It's very well dry. And now we have a little bit, as it's drying, you can see what's happening. It's getting more and more transparent. And we have a little bit more defined tree shapes here without messing with anything that we've already painted. And it's very well incorporated because it is so transparent. So it's just adding a little bit more definition. And I am happy with that. So one less snag, a little bit more definition. I think this guy got fluffier than I originally intended, which is fine with me. He's looking beautiful. The color on that is beautiful. Got lots of light and underpainting coming through these transparent layers of paint. And you know what's funny? I've been messing with gouache a lot more lately, and I think it's just in the winter I get restless and I want to learn a new thing, or a lot of you creative crafty people will relate to the wanting to try all the things, finding it very stimulating to change mediums. So my wish list for Christmas got filled up with like all these like gouache plein air things, and I found a couple people who stream on YouTube plein air painting with gouache, and so that will be my my winter study adventure, and I will probably share a little bit of that here, but I don't know, we'll see. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to add some air and sky holes to these trees, but I need to be very careful about what color I pick up to do that with. It's going to be, and what's so nice about the wet palette with acrylic paint is if this was on any kind of paper plate or plastic or glass palette, all these little paint piles would be dry by now. Even though we're working very quickly, it'd still be dry. But since you're using a wet palette, I hope, it's all still workable. So what you'll want to do is, if you want to add more air here, you'll want to find the sky color or remix the sky color if you need to, and then add it to the right spot. And it doesn't have to be exactly spot on because it's not connected, so it's not going to be too noticeable. Just be careful not to paint over where your tree trunk would be. And then you do kind of want to group these things. Maybe in groups of 3 to 5. Make sure that they aren't dragging you off of your composition. What I'm finding helpful is, like, I'm grabbing the peach right now, and then I'm going across the whole painting and like, where can I add this peach? Can I add this peach anywhere? If not, done with the peach. It's so different when you add peach on top of the blue versus painting around it. It just has a way different effect. I'm rinsing my brush off in water, wiping it on a paper towel, and then going back to blend that. While it's still really fresh paint, you can blend the edges with a wet paintbrush. As long as what you are blending into is nice and dry. You don't have to worry about it too much. I mean, like, you know, be careful with your bristle pressure. You don't want to, like, scratch that thing. Okay, good, lovely. Gonna go to the more orange color. I think we're pretty good there. Now the next warmer color is going to be that pink. Color, but it's the pink version of the purple. A little bit lighter, lighter still, and that'll probably work. These tree holes end up being really magical looking, I think. It's almost a stained glass effect. It adds a lot of movement. All right, now down in here, we're getting into that green area. Now I'm going to add a little bit of that purple to that green because this area right here is a little bit more in between. And I can just add this color. I feel like it's sticking out. Yeah. Oh, this turned out nicer than I thought it was going to. I'm pretty happy with that. I hope you're having fun with this. Now, I'm deciding that the negative painting of the glow in the snow, the way to go, you know. Because I'm not as happy with the peach that went over that blue purple. I mean, it's not terribly distracting now. If you tried that because you saw me try it and you're like, you're right, not my favorite, you can just go over it with more snow color and that should fix it up. That should fix it up pretty well. Let's see, maybe I'll try doing that too. And then we'll absolutely know. So here's that color, the snow color that I was mixing. I was just pulling a little bit of the purple over to the cerulean blue where it meets the white. Making sure, since I'm mixing with my brush, I'm making sure to flip it over and turn it a whole bunch. Now, just really lightly dry brush that over any offending area. And another layer just does it. Just make sure, again, if it's not similar enough, if it bothers you that it's a little bit different than what you have there before, then just incorporate it into the neighboring areas. Make sure it looks like it did get invited to that party. No one will know. There's one thing that I am experimenting with the thought of right now, and it is to add a little bit lighter snow near those little glowy areas. That would make sense to me, and that's what I'm seeing in the reference image as well. And so I'm going to make it very transparent, adding a good amount of water to my flat brush that I've been using for the snow this whole time anyway. And I am just going to grab some titanium white that has just a touch of blue in it. Crazy amount of water though. And in a couple spots. I'm pulling that through the snow area. Now I'm wiping my brush off on a paper towel, and I'm just going to blend the edges, continue to wipe, and then blend the edges again. And as that dry, very quickly you are seeing that the transparency is very great from all that water that was in that brush. And now we got a little bit more of dimension in our snow. Okay, I think that just about does it. I'm very happy with that. I think that turned out nicely. Just go ahead and take a moment to admire what you've done, fix any little funny branch shapes that bother you. You can add a little bit of extra warmth to those branches that are going towards the sun. Add a little bit of magenta. Quinacridone magenta is very transparent, so it's very easy to overlap onto other colors that are already there, and it kind of integrates itself with that transparency. Fantastic. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that snow painting tutorial, and look forward to next Wednesday when we're doing more snow. I actually think what we're going to do is I am going to change this reference photo of Mount Shasta to have just a little bit more freshly fallen snow. I'm going to fix the foreground, change it a bit, but that is what you can look forward to next Wednesday. So thank you so much for joining me today, and until next week, happy painting.